Let me back up for a second. First of all, this is the Texas GOP convention. I didn't know why all these people were here. I thought this was a Mexican buffet.
Welcome.
My stomach is growling.
All right, we are back with Come and Take It, now joined by Chad Prather himself.
When are we coming and taking?
Well, you just try it. You try to come and take it.
You'll find out,
yeah,
right?
you will find out. So obviously still here at the GOP convention here in the great state of Texas. And just want to talk to you about just the future of Texas. It feels bright right now. And I really hesitate to be optimistic about things, generally speaking. That's just how I'm built. But it feels bright. We have all of these, all of these newcomers into the legislature who were elected by the grassroots. I mean, they are as grassroots as you can get. And so now we have people like, Tony Tinderholt and Brian Harrison and Nate Schatzline actually having a posse to come join them to defend good legislature and also, of course, get the bad crap out. And I feel optimistic. Am I wrong?
Let me back up for a second. First of all, this is the Texas GOP convention. I didn't know why all these people were here. I thought this was a Mexican buffet.
Welcome.
My stomach is growling. But anyway, hi everybody. It's good to you know what? It's good to be down here and see all these folks because I think a lot of people in Texas are optimistic right now.
Yeah.
The things that were intended for evil turned out to be things that happened for good.
Tax
so
and
one of the
impeachment.
best possible things that could have happened for Texas, we didn't realize it or know it, was the impeachment sham trial of Attorney General Ken Paxton. When I talked to him about that, I said, what bad came out of that? He said, nothing. Because for the first time in a long time, grassroots candidates actually had a chance in the primary, and we saw them win in resounding numbers. And although there were some runoffs, a lot of it were resounding wins, which tells you that the people of Texas who participated in the primaries not only were participating again, but the people who saw through the nonsense of the rhino garbage that we've seen for so long in the Austin State House, it was exposed.
Yeah.
And so that's a good thing. That's a good thing. And thank God for people like General Paxton, who was strong enough to be able to withstand all of that pressure, come through it victoriously. Mitch Hughes was just on this stage,
Mitch Little,
and what he did, his contribution, I get around here and I start seeing everybody and everybody's name starts mixing together. But you mentioned all the guys that you mentioned.
They needed help.
They're real people.
Yeah.
They're real people. They're not trying to be professional politicians. They're not trying to be permanent Austin.
Yeah.
They come in with values. They come in with something to actually bring to the table and contribute. And that's a blessing for those of us in Texas who love Texas, but realize that Texas isn't the Texas that most Texans think it is.
Right.
We're told, if you watch the mainstream media, we're told that Texas is some big bastion of conservatism, and we're not. We don't have red states anymore because we don't have red cities, and we're certainly true in Texas.
Which, by the way, I just want to point out, the mainstream media thinks that they're trying to portray it as a bad thing.
Right.
Texas is way too red, and we're here in Texas, and we're like, we wish.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people who believe that narrative. So whether you take Dallas, San Antonio, El Paso, Houston, Austin, and even on the fence sometimes Fort Worth.
I don't claim Austin.
Well, it's sort of the center of all the spokes, right?
I just don't claim it.
And listen, they wanted to keep themselves weird. When 10% of your population is transient by choice, that's weird. They want to be homeless, which is strange.
That is weird.
But I call all of those cities the blueberries in the chili, right?
Mm-hmm.
The thing that saves Texas is we have about 10 or 12 cities of over 100,000 people in their population that aren't considered major cities, but when you put them all together, they're a powerhouse. Those are the conservative strongholds that keep Texas at least balanced, even though we're flirting with some very purplish behavior these days.
Yeah.
And when they pass certain legislation that, again, the mainstream media is trying to vilify, that legislation, a lot of it, what's happening here is very misleading. There's so many holes in the legislation that a lot of people don't understand, that we're not as strong conservatively as we could be and should be.
Right, yeah. Yeah, I mean, talking about the future of Texas, of the state, and, just looking at the things that we still need to accomplish. There's a lot, because to your point, most people think of Texas as this bastion of freedom and liberty, and maybe it is if you're like in New Jersey. But I mean, when Florida is kind of out Texasing Texas. I talked to the state superintendent of Oklahoma, Ryan Walters, about what they're doing in Oklahoma schools. And I mean, they are so far in front of Texas right now. It is shameful. And so we've got to get school choice passed, of course. We've got to end the sexualization of children in the state of Texas. We have to get secure elections. We have to secure the border. We need to ban the CCP, China from owning our land. I mean, there's just a litany of things that you could go down the line, bam, bam, bam. These things we have to accomplish, and we don't have time to wait another 4 years to get people in. But it feels like we can accomplish that next session.
Yeah, well, when you consider the fact that our priorities that are consistently being pushed by the GOP, by the convention, by the party, and they're not being addressed in the State House, we have a problem.
Right.
I'm a resident of Montgomery County, Texas, arguably per capita the most conservative county in the state, but yet we still have pornography in school libraries in places like Conroe, Texas. That's the kind of stuff that's got to end. It's a topsy-turvy, upside-down, insane thing that we've justified for far too long, and that's got to go away.
Yeah.
That's got to stop because, you look at a place like you look at a county map of New York State, you'd think, man, that's the most conservative state in the country. But again, it's being ruled bureaucratically by these population centers. And if you look at the United States, it's massively red, but again, ruled by population centers. We've got to make sure that this mob rule, which leads to progressive, Marxist, socialist, backwards way of thinking is eradicated in a place like Texas. Yeah. Because if you look at Washington, D.C. is not representing traditional Texas values or any of our traditional values in that regard. There's no foundation anymore. And so these people that are being elected they're selected and placed in so many situations.
Right.
They're supposed to be there with delegated authority, and they're subject to accountability to the people who put them there. They're going up there, they're playing little God players, and they're little tyrants, and they're putting their boots on our neck with all the everything from lawfare to medical tyranny to corporate tyranny to, all of the different things that we're seeing and we've seen in the last 3 to 4 years, which has reared its ugly head. I hope that people will wake up and stop. We got to stop being sheep and letting these things happen.
Yeah, speaking of waking up, when it comes to who we're sending to the DC swamp, I confronted John Cornyn.
I saw
earlier.
a geriatric, an elderly man walking through here. He looked lost.
He did look a little lost.
I think he was a little out of place.
And I think he was a little, I think he regretted his decision to come to the exhibit hall once the people confronted him.
You guys got to pay attention to the way these politicians do things. First thing, he comes in here at 11 a.m. when there's nobody in the room, okay? He's still going to say he walked the room. And the first thing he does is he goes over to Senator Ted Cruz's booth and he puts on a Ted Cruz hat.
Yeah.
He does that so that when people like you confront him and the videos and the pictures come out, he's wearing a Ted Cruz hat. Man, that's so backwards. But these guys know how to play dirty politics and this stuff like that because it's all about the appearance, the optics.
Well, but I mean, part of this, I lay blame on the people of Texas. Probably not the people here, but it's like, why do we keep electing this guy?
Yeah.
How is it possible that this guy keeps getting elected, that we can't find anyone to primary him? Looking at you, Ken Paxton. But I'm just saying, how is it possible that we keep electing this guy? He's not representing us. He's not worth a darn.
Yeah,
He's not doing anything except sending all of our money to Ukraine. He's not helping to secure the border. He doesn't, I'm telling you, Chad, when I walked over there and talked to him, he could not have cared less what any of his constituents had to say. He doesn't care about Texans.
They're tyrants.
They are.
And they're permanent Washington. We've got permanent Austin. I'm glad to see that a guy like Dade Phelan is losing by 9 points in his district. So that era can be over. I want to have a
watch party for that.
Yeah. So, these are these are more things that came out of the sham impeachment trial, which are in the long run are going to be blessings. I don't understand why people continue to put a Dan Crenshaw from District 2 back in Washington, D.C. Dan Crenshaw, who's consistently...
Is that your district?
It is my district.
Really?
It is.
Have you considered running?
I tell you what, I'm in the next 2 years, it'll be interesting to see. I think Dan may make a move for Cornyn's seat. We'll see what happens. Which is not good either. But I promise you this, I'm committed the next 2 years of my life and making sure this is the last term of Dan Crenshaw, no matter what. And because this has got to go. Any guy that wants to continue to be a two-faced person who wants to say something. You know, that's the thing about truth and error. They're not crosstown rivals. They live next door to each other. So it's easy to slip in and out of truth and error real fast. Dan's a master of that.
Yeah.
And so you're gonna vote to, you know, continue to spy on American people. You're gonna continue to support things like money to Ukraine, and you're gonna do it under the very condescending guise of saying, you guys don't know what you're talking about. You let the experts handle it. Well, I think by and large, most of us are tired of the quote experts who have done nothing but get us into $34 trillion in debt with it continually going higher. We got confusion where we don't know if our sons and daughters or can understand their gender. People will soon be, you know, arrested for mispronouncing somebody.
Right.
And it's like, I'm kind of tired of what the gross garbage that's going on in our political centers is being done right here and then called normal.
Right.
You know, we've got a foundation in this country called divine providence. God's hand has been specifically upon us and also upon Texas for a long time. To the degree, you know, and it worked for hundreds of years. It's worked for a long time in this country to have God and his guiding principles as a force that we make our decisions and we legislate based on those guiding principles. And now they've decided, hey, you know what? We're woke now. We're going to come up with a whole new way of doing things, and it's going to be better. Well, it's not better. We've got history that proves it's not better, but these people are continuing to pursue that agenda, and it's going to lead us to destruction. So quite honestly, as we all know here, we've got an administration in place right now. The guy is licking windows somewhere. He doesn't know he's president of the United States. He's so old, his toe knuckles are on the precipice of eternity. As he stands on stage, he sees dead people. He sees a realm you and I can't even see. And so he doesn't know he's there. I would love just one time. I'll be honest with you. I've got quite the past. I haven't done drugs in a long time, but just once I'd like to have whatever they're giving Joe Biden. I want to ride that lightning just for a minute and just see what he's feeling.
All of the horses that they tested it on in the back are dead.
They're all dead.
But somehow.
Yeah, we buried them legs up. But when you got a guy who gets on stage with his black as marble pupils and he's high as a kite and he gives the State of the Union address, and when the first 20 seconds he starts talking about we're Ukraine and how we're going to support Ukraine, and the borders of Ukraine are more important than the borders of America. This is a Ukraine-first president.
Yeah.
You know, he's got to make sure his laundromat stays in place.
I mean, to be fair, he might just forget where he is. He might think he's in Ukraine, and then that would make sense.
Well, he's forgotten his entire past. He's Puerto Rican, he's Jewish, he's black, he's Hispanic, you know, he's all of these different things. He's got a whole litany of characters in his brain, from Riley last name to Corn Pop to what was it? Uncle Bozy that got eaten by the cannibals. So wherever he's at, he's pandering. You know, just last week he was at the Morehouse College, where, interestingly enough, students and faculty were turning their back on him. You know, a guy like that, again, we look at, and I will say this, we don't have any leaders in this country that God didn't place. If you're a New Testament believer, God places the leaders there. Our biggest prayer is that we don't receive what we deserve. We're starting to see, you can't abort and murder 1.5 million unborn babies every year and not eventually get what you deserve. Those consequences come. God will not be mocked. This country has exactly what it deserves. We have to repent. We have to come back to that founding principle that I mentioned and understand that God's the one who controls our destiny and not us. So when you have a president in place like that, who basically has no sense of right and wrong. He's a pandering puppet. People, as evil as this administration is, we saw as these crazy polling numbers are coming out where the black community and the Hispanic community are not for Joe Biden. Yeah. Because the evil, when it rears its head, people begin to see through it. We saw it with the impeachment sham. People see through it, and it takes stuff like that to expose this nefarious plot that's in our midst.
Yeah, I want to end with just kind of a warning to people, and I don't want to bring it down because I feel, like I said, I'm very optimistic about what's happening in the state. I think that we had to go through hell and come out on the other side, with the impeachment sham to actually wake people up, but George Soros is investing millions of dollars into Texas to turn it blue. Like, that is not a conspiracy theory. That is a real thing that is happening with George Soros's organizations. He is coming for Texas. And so I think that people are waking up at just the right time because he is very dedicated to his cause, which is very evil. So people need to be alert and be aware and stay connected and, go make sure you vote in the runoffs and make sure that you vote for your council. And even, as local as you can get, that's where they tend to attack first because they know people are not paying attention to who's on their school boards. They know people are not paying attention to who's on their city council. And so that's where they infiltrate first. And so I would just encourage people to stay connected, to make sure to stay active in politics. I know you guys have things to do. I know you're busy. I know you have lives. I do too. I know you have kids. I do too. But it's so, so important because if we're not looking and if we're not paying attention, George Soros is going to take over the state of Texas.
Yeah, and I'm with you. I'm optimistic, and God still is on the throne. And I will say this. Let me just say, because I'm a silver lining kind of person as well. And speaking of George's, today is the 4th anniversary of George Floyd's sobriety. And so I just want to give him a shout out. That was, people say success stories don't happen. They do.
Congrats.
Yeah.
That's really?
And scene.
Well, yeah, Chad, I appreciate you being here, and you're my best friend, and I love you a lot. And, I appreciate what you do for the state of Texas. I know a lot of people think that you're just a big mouth, which you are, but also you are very dedicated to the cause, to the grassroots. You put a lot of time and energy into this as well.
I try to make a point, use a little bit of humor along the way. Sometimes it's an easier pill to swallow, and sometimes it just creates a hate group that aligns themselves against me. But yeah, I love this state. It's the center of the universe to me. I think it is God's blessing to the United States. And if you pull Texas out, the whole puzzle falls apart.
Yeah. All right, well, let's get out there and save Texas.
Let's go.
All right.